Okay, so we're back. Again, day 3. Mystery of the Emblem / New Mystery, Mystery Book 2 / New Mystery. Jacob, still here. I can't seem to get rid of him, and we won't be getting rid of him for quite some time. Then Yin, YM Can, you're here too.
Hello.
And, so yeah. The original Fire Emblem Mystery of the Emblem was released in 1994.
January of
correct?
it. January 1994.
We talked about this during the Shadow Dragon.
Yeah, because the first half of
says
Mystery of the Emblem was a remake of FE1.
Yep. And then New Mystery of the Emblem was released in 2010 for the Nintendo DS. Much better game. Not saying a ton against FE3 because it is still a massive improvement over FE1. But FE12 still is better.
We already covered Book 1 in the Shadow Dragon video.
And a lot of the comparisons between Book 1 and Shadow Dragon and Book 2 and New Mystery are very similar because they do run on the same engine.
What I will say is that comparing Book 1 and Book 2 directly, Book 2 is probably the best segment out of the original 3 games. It's the only part of the original 3 games that actually has a different map theme outside of endgame stuff for each game. Alma and Celica routes had different map themes, but otherwise they had the exact same map theme for the entire game. Book 2 is where they introduced different map themes, but ironically they didn't have a dedicated endgame theme. Though it's actually the best plot out of the original 3 Fire Emblem games, except Martha's still a moron.
He's lecturing on his own history or his own
stuff that he should definitely already know.
Yeah, there's this whole segment in FE3 Book 2 where he's like, "Oh, what did Henry do?" And Jagan's like, "Let me explain what Henry did, because you definitely did not know this, and it will take me a while to explain."
You know, the entire reason that your family's nobility, the entire history behind the sword you wield and the warrior fighting.
Yeah, that's where my suspension of disbelief got dropped. It's pretty clear that in FE3, Marth knows literally nothing. They have a similar part in Book 1 where Maladus has to explain the history of the Dragonkin and, like, how Anri slew down Medius and, like, all that. And they had to explain it to Martha. And in the remake, they had the same thing in Martha at the end, like, in Shadow Dragon, Martha's at the end of that, like, "Maladus, is this what you wanted to tell me? I already knew that." Like, they knew in the remakes.
They're just hanging a lampshade over it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but thankfully that's not as much of an issue in the FE12.
Especially because FE12 introduced supports, which I know a lot of people everywhere wanted in Shadow Dragon.
Yes, technically there were supports in Shadow Dragon.
Technically. Well, we're talking about support conversations.
Then no. You gotta be more specific, Jacob. But yeah, support conversations were added to FE12. It was just based on how many maps 2 units were in together. So you didn't have to sit there and, like, support grind, which is so nice.
Which works like it does in Path of Radiance, White Ryan.
But do you mean, like, it's just, it's, I mean, it's just playing through the game, getting people to know each other, and then they can talk in the prep screen and stuff.
Mm-hmm, yeah, that's how it works in Path of Radiance, right?
Yeah, that's how it works. In the GBA games, it was during the battles, I think, yeah.
Yeah,
I do like the in-battle support conversations, but I hate support grinding, so I'd rather take the FE12 version.
Yeah, same. Really same.
Yeah. And honestly, the supports were actually halfway decent. I mean, disappointed that there was still a lot of characters that only had, like, one support line, but
yeah, there's
at least they had a support line.
There's a fair few characters that have multiple support lines, like Minerva has support with Michaelis and then all the White Wings, and I think one other character. Then Katarina has support with several of the 7th Platoon. No, it's just Cecil. Then there's believe Gordon has multiple support lines as well.
Yeah, because he's got Ryan.
And I think he has one with
I'm just gonna
George,
look
too.
up a list of supports.
But yeah, I think Gordon has one with Ryan and George, but don't quote me on that.
Those
I
would make
think
sense.
Ogma had one with Seda, I think.
Yeah, Marth has one with Seda. Ogma might have one with Seda, but you might be thinking of the third DLC, the third Prelude episode.
Yeah, that's true.
All right, I've got it open now. So yeah,
Also,
Gordon does have supports with both George and Ryan. Who else are we talking about?
Minerva.
Yeah, Cecil has with both Katarina and Roderick. Minerva has all three White Wings in Callus. Yeah.
Oh, that actually brings me to something about FE3 versus FE12. In the original FE3, in the start of book 2, they say this whole setup is that there's a disturbance in Grust after a year after
Oh
the war.
yes, actual story.
Yeah, so the setup is that there's we're not going to get into the story really heavy yet. I'm just explaining something. The whole setup to the chapter 1 is that there's a disturbance in Grust. Marth has to go quell the uprising and the Grustian rebellion and all that. So he basically gets sent on a Grustian expedition to go and like defeat the rebels and all that because Altia has to obey Arcania now because Arcania is the ruling nation on the continent. The original game and the remake both, say Marth brought a bunch of new Altian recruits. So in the original book 2, they say this. Bought a bunch of new Altian recruits, and he's going to go quell them. And the original book 2, they have literally no dialogue. There's just a bunch of random new units that you get in the original book 2. The only dialogue they have is death quote, and Roderick having a support with Cecil and like mentioning him in her death quote.
so the only characterization they get is when you lose them forever.
That sounds about right for a Kaga era.
Yeah. In the remake, though, they set this up a lot more organically because there's actually a prologue that focuses on these characters primarily, the new recruits, and then whenever you go into chapter 1, then those recruits, he's bringing the new recruits along from the prologue. This makes a lot more sense now.
Yeah. It's actually got a rapport, and they've actually done a lot of, like, not to spoil anything that happens in the prologue, but they've done a lot for Marth by that point. So they're clearly more than just new recruits.
Marth gets a lot of character development in his supports as well.
Yeah. One thing
and
I
across
liked,
the main story too.
One thing I liked about the supports is like how they just integrated a lot of things from the old notes into the game, like something about the noble houses of Arcanea and Osmore, something about the founder of Grust being close to Manakeets, that kind of stuff. I like that.
Yeah, they put a lot of designer note stuffs in the different supports.
Yeah, honestly, I think these supports are really what makes Arcanea feel like a real place. This is really what expands. Like, this is really what we didn't have before New Mystery of the Emblem. That's one of the reasons that New Mystery of the Emblem, I think, is so great story-wise, because it actually takes the time to expand on the world and the characters.
Yeah.
Especially compared to the previous games.
Yeah.
I know. I feel this because when I finished Shadow Dragon, I really didn't have a good view of Arcanea. I think, like, yeah, you had the basics, but New Mystery helped with that, expanding the view of Arcanea.
One thing that kind of helps that is at the start of every chapter, they do the thing that Path of Radiance and Radiant Dawn did, where at the start of every chapter, and this was not in the original book too, basically they have a lot more dialogue between the various characters, not support conversations, but just like generally elaborating on what's going on. And Tellius did this too. Basically a bunch of conversations like, Jagan's explaining this, or Marth and like George are having this conversation about Astrid because you're gonna have to recruit Astrid in this chapter, and they're kind of letting you know, hey, George is saying I'll go and recruit Astrid. Like, oh, well, this happened between Shadow Dragon and New Mystery, and that's why Astrum has Mercurius. They basically do a lot of effort, even outside of the support conversation, to do that.
Yeah, also in the prologue they have this nice recap of the War of Shadows, and I don't
And
know.
for anybody who's for some reason playing this game without playing Shadow Dragon,
Oh God! Imagine playing this game without playing Shadow Dragon and New Mystery, and without playing Shadow Dragon and Echoes. Imagine how lost you'd be.
Yeah, like who is this Marth guy? Why is he important?
I mean, I feel like you could kind of like squirm around Echoes a little bit, but like it just provides a little bit more explanation for stuff you didn't really have questions about.
It's
Playing
because
this
it's
without Shadow
Sirius
Dragon.
mainly. Sirius is the big thing,
Oh yeah,
especially because he's
obviously.
especially because he's so important in New Mystery of the Emblem to the
Mhm.
point that he's a force deploy in the end game.
Yeah,
Yeah.
if one were to just play Shadow Dragon and then Mystery of the Emblem, then they're like, wait, why is he back? Like, what's this about? Like,
Which, to
suddenly
be
back.
fair, is the reaction that most people have in New Mystery.
Yeah. I mean, it's the correct response to have, and really the only difference is that you'd be having this response about a game earlier. But even so,
I like
Speaking
how.
of-
Oh wait, what were you gonna say?
no, go ahead.
Okay, so they also have a lot of the stuff that would later be refined for Awakening, like Shadow Dragon and New Mystery. Was clearly when Intelligent Systems was like trying to figure out what they wanted to do with the series, but they weren't quite into that Awakening era yet.
Yeah, this is kind of like the FE4-5 era where they almost know what they want to do with Fire Emblem, but they aren't going to quite get there until Binding Blade, or in this case, Awakening.
But what's interesting about this is that Shadow Dragon and New Mystery feel a lot more like the GBA games. They actually feel a lot more like a defined product than 4 and 5 did, in the sense that they kind of define what the series is.
Well, yeah. But I mean, more in just like the era of what Fire Emblem was at that point in time.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if you're going to go through a Fire Emblem cycle, they would be on the same step of the cycle.
So, like, one of the main things that they added was the Barracks. Technically, the Barracks has a slightly different Japanese name between FE12 and FE13. But they do mostly the same thing. As whenever a real life time passes, according to your system's clock, it'll count how many hours pass. Once like a certain amount of time passes, you'll be able to have a random chance in the barracks to get an item, and I guess this helps newer players to prevent getting stuck.
Yeah, and there's also a lot of really interesting items in there, like a lot of the named items that we see in Heroes originally started out as named items in this game.
Yeah,
Even though they were kind of terrible in...
Actually, no, a lot of them are really good.
Oh, are they? I just never used them because I saw they were E rank and just
basically, a lot of them are really good. Some of them are E rank, some of them are higher rank, but basically they're like variations of stronger weapons. Like Merrick's Tome is a slightly better variation of the Cutting Gale Tome. And Reese's Tome is a modified version of the Bolganon Tome. But the biggest one is definitely Clarice's. Basically, with Clarice's bow is basically a killer bow on steroids. If you happen to get Clarice's bow, it is totally viable for you to make a sniper who can get like something like 70% crit if he's using for Clarice's bow.
Oh boy.
Oof.
But yeah, it's basically a killer bow with a higher crit, Clarice's bow. So yeah, a lot of them are actually really good. It's just thing is, they actually have the lowest drop rate out of the barracks items, so it's balanced in that regard. And a lot of the items in that same pool, I believe, or the pool below it, are really gag items that will basically make you waste a barracks use, like the frying pan, axe, the
glass
lance. Then there's a broken toy bow. Basically, items that are completely useless and then just exist to be thrown out.
the best items.
Yeah, basically the barracks is kind of balanced to where you might get something really, really freaking amazing, and you might get complete garbage. It's not like
Yeah,
they're
but
gonna.
it's also worth mentioning that you're not always going to get weapons for the barracks.
Oh yeah,
Sometimes you'll get
sometimes.
experience points. Sometimes you'll get support points.
Yeah, and sometimes there's normal items. I
Yeah,
believe you can get the elixirs from here and like concoctions from other games, which actually weren't in Shadow Dragon. Shadow Dragon just kept it the vulneraries that the Fire Emblem 1 and 3 had. But New Mystery the Emblem has concoctions and elixirs from the more recent games that you can get in the barracks. But what was I gonna say? Damn it! I was gonna say something, damn it, but I lost my train of thought.
Also, temporary stat boosts.
Oh yeah, you can get temporary stat boosts from the barracks. Another interesting mechanic that the barracks introduced that Awakening kept and then was kind of dropped after Awakening is glass weapons.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, glass weapons are A-tier weapons that are like functionally identical to silver weapons. Maybe even a little bit better than silver weapons in some respects, but they only have like 3 uses, and they're E rank. So basically, you're going to give them to your weakest units that are only at E rank to kind of help them get a few kills in, because it's only 3 uses. So it's pretty much good for just 1 kill, and that's it.
A kind of literal glass cannon, so to speak.
Mm-hmm. And of course, another thing that the game added was casual mode.
Yeah.
I'm sure a lot of people know what casual mode is.
Yep. But yeah, it wasn't a new thing in Awakening. It was a new thing in New Mystery. Go play New Mystery. Yeah. Also, I think I'm going to call out that my favorite of the rare weapons is the fact that Rice has his own staff. It's not called the Rice's staff or anything. It's just called Rice. And I think that's awesome. Or at least in the old translation. Obviously, that might change.
Yeah, I have it as Rice's staff.
I just find it funny that it's Rice.
The old translation actually had it as healer.
That's kind of lame.
Yeah, but I have it as Rice's staff in the current translation.
All right, yeah, that makes sense.
Oh no, wait, healer was the medium. Okay, I was confused. I guess we should also cover the Satellaview game here, since that's about to be like the original one.
Yeah, probably.
BS Fire Emblem.
BS Fire Emblem was obviously part of the Satellaview line of games.
I promise, guys, this is going to be relevant in a minute. Just bear with us.
Yeah. That included 3 survive chapters, pretty much, where you had to survive for an hour worth of Fire Emblem with... these were events that took place in between the prologue. Well, originally it was before the events of FE1 and FE3. But now it is between the prologue of Shadow Dragon and the main game of Shadow Dragon. And all 3 of these maps found their way into special maps in New Mystery of the Emblem. They were all remade, and they're available after you beat the game?
No, they're available after you beat the prologue.
Oh, after you beat the prologue, okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then it's 4 chapters, by the way.
And then after you beat the game, you get the extra 3 chapters.
Yeah, and
no, the extra 3 chapters are also after you beat the...
Are they?
Yes.
Oh.
And those were kind of added as a prologue to Book 2/New Mystery, right?
So alongside those, there were another 3 maps that were added to, like, completely new maps that acted as a prologue to New Mystery of the Emblem.
So
these would introduce new characters to New Mystery. People like Arlen or Katarina.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and so
it kind of sets them up for the prologue.
And the characters that were unique to BS Fire Emblem were also added to like the main game of New Mysteries.
Yes, they were.
Yes, this gave Malice in particular a lot of new life, because after FE12, Malice, frequently mind you, but Malice showed up in Awakening and Cypher basically Malice ended up being the face of BSFE in a sense, in terms of their original characters because of her appearance in FE12's main story. And she's actually a Myrmidon, can compete with Navarre in the main story.
Come to think of it, she also appears in the new extra chapters.
Yeah.
Aside
Yeah,
from
she
the main game.
has the most appearances now out of any character from BS Fire Emblem. Yeah, and the extra chapters fleshed out her backstory with Ogma and stuff.
Mm-hmm. And also, while we're talking about new characters, we could also talk about the entire new storyline that was added into New Mystery of the Emblem through the prologue and the paralogs of the story of Katarina.
Yeah, Katarina is actually one of the better characters in Arcania, actually, in my opinion.
I will fully agree with this.
Yeah, me too. I really like Katrina and her whole arc.
Her entire story is basically a spoiler, though.
Yeah.
Yeah, so... but just be sure whenever you play this game, get the paralogs.
I guess functionally we should explain. The paralogs are like how they were in the Elite games, 6 and 7. And they tend to have very similar unlock requirements. Like you have to do certain things in the preceding chapter to unlock them.
You have to make sure you don't kill anyone in the prologue. You have to make sure that you don't kill too many of the captive clerics.
And another one, and then you have to... then for another one, you have to make sure the... well, that's a spoiler. You have to make sure you get all 5 of something.
Mm-hmm. And you also have to make sure you get all the paralogs to get.
I think you know what I'm talking about because it's
paralog.
chapter 20X. You have to get all 5 of something in order to unlock it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Something which I think is really cool they added into Echoes. Like just that callback to these items.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they did. I don't really think we really got into BS Fire Emblem enough, though, to be honest. Because
then let's go talk about those 3 maps more specifically. Then
4.
Those 4 maps.
4 maps. Sorry. Which one am I forgetting?
Basically, in the original BS Satellaview, Nintendo was trying to try out the Satellaview in Japan at the time, and they were trying new products out there. At the time, Kaga wanted to make a new game in the Arcania series, but one that would sort of flesh out the characters in a way that was kind of like support conversations would later do, but for some reason Kaga didn't have the idea to do support conversations quite yet like he didn't have before. So what ended up happening was that game became a prequel focusing mainly on Princess Nina. And this became a 4-chapter prequel to FE3 Book 1 on this Satellaview called BS Fire Emblem, Arcania Chronicles, I want to say is the translation.
Arcania War Chronicles.
Nintendo had a poll.
Nintendo
Nintendo had a poll lately that had a quote-unquote officially translated name for it, but I don't remember what it was.
All right.
There's a few ways you can render it, but basically it's BS Fire Emblem.
Yeah. So the first chapter that was taking place within the Arcania Castle as Nina's trying to flee. It's got all the characters that were introduced in the Millennium Court chapter in Shadow Dragon, which would be Boa, Tomas, Medea, Dolph, and Misellen.
Mm-hmm.
Episode 2 is after she's escaped. No, she hasn't escaped yet.
No, she hasn't. Chapter 2 focuses mainly on Hardin and the Wolf Guard. And,
yeah, that's right.
Yeah, and during the conquest of Aurelis, they round up some bandits or something who abused the Macedonian name.
They round up Macedonian.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then chapter 2 is where Frost the Bishop was introduced. Which is his only appearance until New Mystery.
Yeah, then he appeared in the New Mystery main chapters, and that was his only other appearance.
Yeah,
and he actually kind of shows up kind of like Yoder does in FE6, or Yodel, however you want to pronounce it. He just kind of shows up towards the end.
I find it.
I've been following you guys for like 6 months.
I find him endearing. Yeah, he just shows up out of the blue. Oh yeah, there was a war going on.
And then
Yeah.
I'm going to help.
Yeah, I came to get. Yeah, I could. Wait, you walked here from Macedon? Yeah.
I was following you all the way through, and you just wouldn't stop. You just wouldn't stop. And every time I went to catch my breath, you would already be like 50 paces further away, so I had to keep running after you. I don't know if it's like that extreme, but it's kind of getting into that territory.
Yeah. Like, that's pretty much what this man was doing for, 50% of this game. With just walking behind Marth.
More like 75%. He really shows up near the end.
It's like, oh my goodness, you saved Prince Minerva. I have to repay you somehow. Let me just not notify any of you.
And he saved Minerva in what, chapter 3?
Well,
I think you saved her in chapter 6.
well,
Yeah, chapter 6.
it's
Alright.
technically Well, no, the
I think
Macedonian...
chapter 6 is the one where you get Samuel, so.
Yeah.
Actually, I think you're right. It was a little bit after that then. Might have been chapter 8 then.
Chapter 3 is...
No,
yeah,
it
but
was chapter 7 or something. I
Chapter
don't
3
know.
is where they put down the Macedonian rebellion and kind of save Minerva, but then, spoiler...
Oh, yeah, that's what I was thinking of. But yeah, you're right.
I think Frost probably did that after chapter 3 then.
And
Yeah, because that's when he freed Macedon. He lives in Macedon.
Yeah.
And then in the third BS Fire Emblem chapter,
Is the
This
best
is where
BS Fire Emblem
things-
chapter.
okay, 3 and 4 are where BS Fire Emblem really shines. Because chapter 3 had the most dysfunctional party formation you could ever see in the entire series.
Yeah, so this is Ricard, Castor, Navarre, and Lena, along with Dice and Malice, who are new characters.
Yeah, Dice and Malice
Now-
get introduced halfway through because the setup in the original game is that Dice and Malice are hired mercenaries that are kind of like the generals in the Shadow Dragon prologue in that you can't really kill them, and they're just there. And then at like the 35-minute mark, Ricard and them have a conversation. Ricard's like, "Hey, I'll pay you more." And they're like, "Damn it, we're hungry. We need to join." Because in the Satellaview games, the Satellaviews were broadcast live. This is an important aspect of the BSFE. They were broadcast
I called them
live.
survive maps because you weren't just like trying to play through and kill a boss in a chapter. You literally had to survive for an hour straight of playing Fire
Which
Emblem.
technically you could.
That sounds
just
really
wait an
tedious.
hour and not finish the turns, but where would be the fun in that?
Oh yeah, obviously.
So basically, the Satellaview games were broadcast live. They had like actual voice actors on the radio station St. Geiga, where the Satellaview was hosted, and basically the voice actors would get on at whenever they're actually queued up to go on. It was like a live radio show, sort of.
Mm-hmm.
So it was like actually done live.
And a lot of these voice actors were reused in later Fire Emblem games,
Yeah,
right? At least
actually,
in the Japanese.
what's interesting is that in the Japanese version, I think literally all of these voice actors actually later reprised their role for Fire Emblem Echoes, which is actually really cool. Like, Camus's voice actors, same. The White Wings voice actors, the same. They reprised their roles in Echoes and Heroes in the Japanese version.
But not in the US, because this wasn't released in the US.
Yeah, that is true. Although I imagine they probably would if they ever localized BSFE in, like, never.
And then speaking of Camus, we can move over to episode 4,
Well,
which
I
follows
was
the events.
talking about episode 3.
I wanted
Okay,
to
fine.
say
We can talk more about episode 3.
I wanted to say something about episode 3 too. It's kind of mindless. Like, they raid the Arcanea Palace here, right?
Mhm.
And it occurred to me that in Shadow Dragon you find Rickard in the Palace of
Arcadia
Aurelius.
prison. So he went back and tried it again.
No, he's not in Arcanea prison. He's in Aurelius. So maybe he tried to because they are successful in robbing this. So maybe he tried it again and just failed and was thrown into
Yeah,
the
he
dungeon.
went back and tried the same trick somewhere else and got caught.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, that sings about in character for him. Like, honestly, I didn't talk about him much, but Ricard is one of my favorite characters in Arcanea.
I really
He has a
don't
really
like,
weird backstory according to the novels that I'm not going to get to here.
I don't like
Yeah.
Ricard that much. I find
I
him
love
kind of
Ricard.
annoying. At least he is a
and-
caster.
But my favorite part is all of the my favorite thing is that a lot of the lies first dialogue heroes. My favorite part is Navarre very subtly, constantly threatening Ricard. This is what made me like. This is the chapter that made me really like Navarre. This and his Owain warriors.
Yeah, it's actually very similar to the Owain support.
He just looks at Ricard and like he says something effect of, "No one has been able to survive my blade." Whenever Ricard's getting out of line, and then eventually he gets so sick of Ricard, he's like, I'm gonna cut out your tongue if you keep this up, right?
Keeping in mind that technically Ricard's in charge this entire time.
Yeah, Navarre only gets roped in because that's part of Navarre's character quirks is that he has a soft spot for women.
Mm-hmm.
That came out wrong, but I'm sure you'll get the idea.
Yeah.
He's not like Sane. He's not like Sane.
No,
He
just wants to protect.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so basically Lena was able to get Navarre. And then Castor's here trying to swindle the rest of them out. And then like halfway through the chapter, so as I was trying to explain, the original BSFE, because it was like on an actual schedule, it had an in-game timer. So like the 30-minute mark in the original is when Malice and Dice would join you, but in the remake they changed this to where you need to talk to them with Ricard to actually recruit them like you would normally after you get a certain amount of gold. So basically, there's this whole dysfunctional party going on. And then along comes Malice and Dice who's saying, "We ain't getting paid enough for this shit. Come on, I know you got some stuff to feed us." This is the most dysfunctional party.
And I will say that Dice and Malice are not exactly a functional family as things stand either.
No.
So this is... The reason I love this chapter so much is just because, like, this is never a party I would have put together on my own. Like, you would never think of putting these people together. It makes sense. All of them are here for a reason. Such as the fact that Lena was lied to.
Lena. Okay, so Lena is like the voice of the chapter.
As she needs to be. Because nobody else is going to.
This entire chapter has such a wonderfully dysfunctional party setup that it's honestly...
Especially keeping in mind that they're still using the FA3 version of Castor. Mm-hmm. Who has a lot of differences from the Shadow Dragon version of Castor. Well,
this is kind of like... Whenever they had BSFE, they actually contradicted one of Kaga's earlier statements that Castor only became a swindler after Book 1. So they kind of slightly retconned Castor in the original game, but this is retained in the remake. So basically, Castor's always just a swindler.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's kind of pathetic.
So, and he's constantly, and I swear to God, it's like a punchline. Like every so often, he'll come in and say, "Me mothers, can you spare me some gold?"
Yeah, like in the proper game, in his support lines too, he just gets caught in his own web of lies, and he's like to make run 10 rounds around the camp or something just to get him into shape.
Our BSFE Chapter 3, especially the remake version where they add more dialogue to it, it's beautiful. It is like it's literally shenanigans. The chapter.
Like there's one scene for Fire Emblem that should be like an anime episode.
Yeah, it's not like Awakening though, where every character is just like kind of annoying with their gimmicks, but it's believable.
They actually play off of each other.
Yeah, they're actually playing off of each other because it's all believable enough to where you just so happen to put together the worst combination of people possible.
Yeah, like the gimmicks, the character gimmicks in Arcanea aren't really that overt, but yeah, it works, and you get shenanigans. I like it.
Are we there?
Yeah.
Are we done talking about Chapter 3 then?
I suppose so. Let's move on to Chapter 4.
Yeah, we don't want to make this entire episode about Chapter 3.
No.
Yeah, we just wanted to... Yeah.
Let's move on to episode 4.
Well, I guess just last thing is that Malice and Dice get a pretty big role in other parts of the stories, like I mentioned. They appear in the Prelude chapters, and they appear relatively early on in the main story. And Malice is actually a really good Myrmidon, so the characters in this chapter, the original characters, ended up getting the most love out of any of the new characters. So, okay, I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, and then from there we can talk about some of the characters that got the least love, which would be the 3 members of the why can't I remember their name?
Sable Knights.
Sable Order. Sable Order.
Yeah, the 3 Sable Knights. These 3 guys are Camus' pretty much right-hand men. And speaking of Camus, he's here too, along with Nina. This is the chapter where Nina and Camus pretty much fall in love, and Camus is like, "Okay, I'm not going to give you to Medius." Like,
that's the
get out of
spoiler
here.
for Shadow Dragon, but okay.
Oh yeah, sorry, I can cut that out.
We can just censor it.
Yeah.
We can just censor it.
Yeah, pretty much this is Camus and his people defending Nina.
Yeah.
That's a little spoiler.
Well.
Well, how can we say that what's going on here without spoiling?
Why don't we just put a spoiler warning in the video and say skip to this part?
Yeah.
I'm going to say spoiler warning now, but I've already recorded the spoiler.
Okay. So basically, this entire chapter is interesting because Belf gets an actually really significant role in the main story of V12.
Okay.
Because he's the only person, like literally the only person in the entire cast who actually figures out who Sirius is by himself, other than Nina near the end.
Mm-hmm.
He is literally the only person. He has a support line with Sirius. It's the only person who figures out who Sirius really is out of the entire cast, other than Nina. And the other 2, they get nothing.
Yeah.
They lose.
Layden or Raiden?
The other ones are, I think, Raiden and
Roberto.
Yeah,
Roberto,
thank you. I couldn't think of his name.
Yeah, they're like.
That tells you how much effect the other 2 have in the game.
I don't know if this was discussed, but like, yeah, those 2, they're a bit of a bigger problem with Arcanea as a whole. I think just these squads of duplicate units, faceless hordes with little to no characterization in general. It's kind of annoying.
In the original BSFE, it's interesting because these characters didn't really have any dialogue aside from the intro, and they pretty much just existed so you didn't just have Camus and Nina.
Yeah, okay. But
I wouldn't mind a chapter where you just wreck everything with Camus for an hour.
Yeah, but this chapter is like, they send this huge ass army after you, and like Camus is the only one who can really stand against it. So what is their point?
Then you also have to take care of the bandits on the right, which is a job.
Yeah, okay, fair enough. Otherwise, Nina just gets killed. Also, what's interesting about this chapter, I think, it's the only time that Medeiros actually leaves Dollar and just comes along and does stuff, basically.
Camus, I need this woman. I need this woman so bad I need to get out of my chair.
He literally just comes over and he actually says, what's interesting is that he actually says that Camus reminds him of Henri. Something that he actually never says to Marth.
Yeah. Because yeah, okay. Can I like... Yeah, that's a spoiler for the main story, never mind.
Yeah, I think we're just going to have this entire section spoilered. Is that correct, Deku?
Yeah, that's...
Yeah, just all of episode 4.
Yeah. So, like, what's interesting... That ties into the whole muddling of history too, right? Because, like, Marth isn't really like Henri. He wins hearts.
More like Marcellus.
He wins hearts and isn't really a lonesome hero like Awakening would have you believe, because of the historical obscuring here. And like already by the start of FE12 or in the prologue, they already like he's this big hero who saved the world all by himself, basically, and like they're surprised to find out that he really isn't that, and he has doubts too, and yeah.
Yeah, what's interesting is that a lot of FE12 story, and this is because this FE12 was developed during the same time as Awakening's pre-production, a lot of FE12 organically sets up Awakening, which actually makes FE12 really cool. And like YMCan said, a big part of that is they set up how Marth is kind of being idolized as something he's not, which is a big part of his character arc.
Yeah, and that'll carry over a lot into Lucina. Another
Yeah.
3,000 years.
2000, but yeah.
2,000. But yeah, sorry. Tiki is
Well,
3,000 by that
and
time.
another
That's why.
thing is, he's already known as the Hero King here in this remake from the start, since the War of Shadows, and not
Mm-hmm.
in the original FE3. He only became known as the Hero King after.
I
the
guess we're done with
conflict.
episode 4.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I guess so.
All
No,
right.
but yeah, he became known as the Hero King at an earlier point of time in the remake. And what I like about that is the Japanese title of Fire Emblem Echoes. It's actually Fire Emblem Echoes Another Hero King. So, and so like that's another nice callback, I think. So like because it wouldn't make a lot of sense if Alm was also known as a Hero King if Marth wasn't known as a Hero King yet. So he can be another Hero King case.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, honestly, like we're talking about how they portrayed like Marth differently from how people thought of him.
Yeah.
But honestly, they did a lot for Marth. I mean, they gave,
Mhm.
like we talked about last time, they gave him a character arc in Shadow Dragon, and I might want to say that his character arc in New Mystery is better than that.
Yeah, a
Yeah.
big part of his arc, which is kind of alluded to earlier in our conversation, Marth is trying to live up to the expectations of him being this sort of deity figure of Anri when he's not. And he knows full well that he actually will never be able to live up to that fully, but he still pushes himself to. There's a lot of nuance to Marth's character arc in FE12, and it's kind of a more refined version of what Leif goes through in Thracia. But I mentioned this in the Thracia video, too.
Yeah, that'll be coming out in a couple days. You guys haven't seen that yet, unless you're watching from the future. Hello.
Marth has to grapple with a lot of things through FE12. I would say, even though a lot of his actual character development is done, he goes through a lot of things that make him question his character, I think, is how I would best describe it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I remember one poignant moment. I think it was in the paralogue of chapter 6X. It was like he literally breaks down crying because he doesn't want to kill his allies from the previous war. And it's like, yeah, that's the big theme of New Mystery, of course. And like,
Yeah, like they go very much out of their way to show you that not only is he not what people are portraying him as, he's pretty much the exact opposite. Marth needs his friends to stand strong. That is why he is strong. It's also even reflected in Heroes with his weapon, which doesn't strengthen himself, but strengthens his allies. That's what he's good at.
Yeah, and his skill Fire Emblem does that too in his legendary version.
yeah, and in Awakening they parallel this too with Lucina. Tiki says at one point like, "Oh yeah, you win hearts so effortlessly, like Marth." At one point in their support.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, if you like Lucina, you definitely need to be playing this game.
Yeah, this game sets up a lot
Hint,
of
hint,
arc in particular.
Narth.
This game sets up a lot of the storyline of Awakening, and it was kind of released to promote Awakening in Japan, from what I understand, or what it was just the next Fire Emblem game at the time. They didn't really have a finalized title. So it makes sense that Awakening is kind of predicated on the idea that you would have played New Mystery first and kind of as a New Mystery sequel, because they don't give a shit that it was never localized outside of America.
Yeah, Awakening.
Yeah, they don't. This is gonna come as a shock to you guys, but they don't make Fire Emblem for Americans.
So yeah, Awakening
They
is
make it
very
for
much
Japanese people, and we just get it too.
Awakening is very much a successor / storyline sequel. It's not a direct sequel, but it's a sequel nonetheless.
It's
Very
more
much
like
a sequel to New Mystery.
it's more like a continuation of the same place, I guess.
Mm-hmm. And New Mystery kind of expects you to have played New Mystery going into it.
You mean Awakening?
Yeah,
Yeah, he said New Mystery expects you to play New Mystery.
Oh, God. I meant
Yeah,
Awakening expects you to have played New Mystery going into it.
Yeah.
Anything else about Marth you want to talk about?
Not really. There's another thing I wanted to mention maybe, but it does really anything to do with Marth. It's more like a addition they made.
I want to talk about it.
Well, what I like about this, they carried over the index or library thing from Radiant Dawn. That's one thing I like. Just you can flip through all the characters and like see their relationships, the maps on the countries and stuff. That was a
Yeah, that's
nice
actually
addition.
something I really liked too.
Yeah. And as I said, it was first in Radiant Dawn. It wasn't in Shadow Dragon, but it was in this game, and I like that. I hope they bring that back one day.
Yeah,
That
they
would have
had a
been
lot
so
of
helpful
things
for the
like,
three
oh,
houses.
this character is married to this character, or oh, this character has some undefined connection to this character. And they even have characters that appeared in Shadow Dragon but not in this game, just for the sake of completeness. It's actually really
Yeah.
cool.
Radiant Dawn had a 2, I think, with the characters. Yeah, but that's not really important for this.
I guess anything else we want to talk about for the main story?
Not really, I guess.
I think we've covered most of it without going to deep spoiler territory.
I guess the last thing we want to talk about is the Prelude Chapter. So we explained how FE12 was technically not just a remake of Book 2, but also a remake of BSFE. And BSFE was a prequel to Book 1, and the remade version is takes place between Prologue 4 and Chapter 1 of Shadow Dragon. They also technically made what is also a BSFE style prologue to the main game. It takes place before the prologue of FE12, and kind of just helps set the stage a little bit more. It has a few spoilers for the prologue, which is why it doesn't let you play the prologue until you play the prologue.
Mm-hmm.
What's unique about this chapter, though, is that Prelude 2 has you play as characters that are not playable anywhere else in the series aside from Heroes and Awakening. Certain enemy characters from the main game. You'll know who I'm talking about, but that's the most interesting thing about these chapters.
One that's not a spoiler, they'll just kind of give you guys an example, is my love for Legion is very much well known. This is the one place where he's playable. And so that just kind of gives you an example of what we're dealing with here. Like these recurring enemy type characters.
Yeah, Prelude 2 kind of steals the show with its gimmick of playing as the certain enemy characters from the main story. But Prelude 3 helps elaborate on characters like Ogma and Malice a bit more, and Prelude 1 helps focus on the Kandane cast a little more. They're not to be overlooked, and though Prelude 2 kind of steals the show.
Yeah, well, Prelude 1... Actually, Prelude 1 is also pretty important for the main story, but yeah...
Spoilers. Oh yeah, it is very important.
It sets up important things.
And also, if we're going to talk about these, we should mention that during the Shadow Dragon episode, we talked about the paralogs in that game, which you wouldn't usually come across unless you were specifically trying to, because you have to kill people to get into them, and they introduce new characters.
And doing the paralogs in those in Shadow Dragon would eventually lead you to a bad ending.
Yeah. Well, those characters are actually finally introduced into this game. Those were Athena, Etzel,
okay,
let me list them off. There's Norn, Athena, Horus, Etzel, Ymir, and Nagi.
Yes.
Yep.
All of those are actually playable in the main story of this game. Okay,
spoiler warning, brief one. Also, Frey is playable in this game as well. And unlike Shadow Dragon, where he just quote-unquote dies after like 2 chapters, he's actually a very competent unit. I wouldn't say he's an amazing unit, but he's actually a decently competent unit in the main game of FE12. You there?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, I would say Frey's a decently competent unit.
Yeah.
Not an amazing one, but competent.
I didn't use him, but...
Yeah, I kind of
could understand doing
I think.
Yeah. I guess that is the one thing that kind of has contention about this game. A lot of people are... This is a controversial aspect. Some people really like it. Some people really hate it. It's the size of the cast.
It's huge.
Yeah,
Radiant Dawn and Fates are the only one that rival it, I think.
I read online it's the biggest cast in the series, but I don't know if that's true. But
I think Radiant Dawn does beat it out, yeah.
I think
Mm,
Radiant Dawn is slightly less, but almost that size.
yeah, okay, but
Radiant Dawn and New Mystery both have the sort of gimmick in their cast that they have every character from the previous game with a handful of exceptions who become NPCs.
Jagan.
if I want to be pedantic,
Alas.
there is one character in Radiant Dawn who isn't playable, but
There's like I think 4 characters who become NPCs: Jagan, Boa. Someone else who is a very spoilery character who's kind of the center to the plot, and I think one other
Goto.
character.
Goto.
I think we
Oh
can
yeah,
say Gato
Gato.
without. Yeah.
Yeah, Gato's the 4th one. But yeah, I think that's all of them. I think y'all know who the 3rd one is.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah.
Explosion of blood.
The dogs.
Or actually,
Yeah.
or was it just what's the spontaneous combustion? That's it. Spontaneous
So
combustion emblem.
basically, this is kind of a double-edged sword, the size of the cast, because unlike Radiant Dawn, which didn't have supports at all, this game actually does have a decent chunk of supports between characters. But a lot of characters only get a throwaway support line where they basically just talk about themselves, and they only have this one support instead of a dedicated support line with another character.
Yeah, and some of these are like I mentioned before. In general, I do like the supports, but some of them are just like Dolphin Magellan or Board and Cord. Yeah, it ties a bit into the faceless horse problem I mentioned earlier, but yeah, I think with Dolphin Magellan, it was like the one likes cooking, the other likes eating. It's kind of yeah. Maybe some of these didn't
Yeah.
Did a
all that much
lot for
fleshing out.
characters. Like,
Dolphin and Magellan don't even know each other's names, which I just find to be funny.
Wait,
it
okay.
actually does
Yeah.
help a lot of characters.
Yeah, I think it's Magellan refers to Dolph at was talking about how in Shadow Dragon they were like using their bodies to defend everyone else. Magellan was like, yeah, me and this other guy. Like he doesn't even say Dolph. He just says this other guy.
Mhm. And yeah, they look identical to each other.
Yeah, that may be the joke, but like with Border,
Spitting image and the dead ringer.
yeah, with Board and Cord, it was like yeah, one likes to cut wood precisely, and the other one likes to cut wood fast.
Quickly.
I don't know. Yeah, okay, but like
And they hate each other, but they love each other.
yeah, they have a bromance, but
Board and Cord get a lot more character development out of the 3rd Prelude, honestly.
yeah, okay, and like they get a bit of characterization in Tokyo Mirage sessions of all places, but yeah, it's kinda. I think I'm just wondering, like, did everyone use sports because the volume is rather big, as you said.
Mm-hmm.
So like,
This helps.
yeah,
Like I was trying to say, this helps a lot. Fair few characters, like I want to say, Castor was benefited from it, from what it's worth in terms of characterizing him. Another good example is Warren, or whatever his localized name ends up being.
Mm-hmm.
Warren actually becomes an extremely interesting character because of the support with Katrina.
yeah,
But then there's characters like Dolphin Magellan who kind of it's kind of clear that they were on the lower end of the priority for giving everyone a support.
yeah. You mentioned Castor. Like, I like that support line solely for the reason he finally gets his due, and his web of lies just crumbles before his eyes. And he has to run 10 rounds along the campment or something.
Actually, I think it was 100 rounds.
Oh, even better. So yeah, I think most of the supports in this game are pretty good, but the volume is it's a bit much. Like when I played the game, it was just okay. I had a central team, and I built that up fairly early in the game. So like you get all these new units as you go through the game, and like most of them just were put on the bench, and like you don't really do much with them.
Mm-hmm.
So I do think the volume of characters is a bit of a problem in this game.
Is there anything else to discuss? Or should we get towards the grading portion?
I feel like we're forgetting something.
Yeah, Chris. Chris exists.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's the thing.
Chris, not as bad as people make you think, not as memorable as people make you think, still a better character than Beleth. Yes?
Yeah.
Honestly, Chris is like a major character in the
In Katarina's
Prologue.
storyline.
No, he's not even a major essential. Okay, he's like good for like one chapter in her storyline, and that
He's essential for her character development more than her storyline.
Yeah, but that whole story,
she.
that whole storyline, yes, for Katrina, but for the rest, he really doesn't play a role, or that character.
This was kind of the introduction of the Avatar system proper, I think. And this was closer in line to the FE7 tactician. Chris isn't really someone who's essential in the story outside of being one of Marth's friends because of the events of the prologue. But Marth makes friends with basically everyone.
He's a friend magnet.
Remember earlier when we were talking about how Marth was just stupid in the original games because he had to have everything explained to him? Chris takes over that job in this game.
Yeah, Chris is
Probably the
basically
main
this
reason for Chris to
Altian
exist.
bumpkin who
Yeah, he was trained by their grandfather who was a friend of Jagan, and he had to become a knight. So he is becoming a knight, and he becomes a knight, and he stays a knight.
And he's basically been sheltered all his life, so he basically fulfills the role of Jagan having to explain everything without having to redundantly explain everything to Marth. Jagan was admitted by the developers that he's basically there to exist whenever they just need characters to talk without having anyone to actually talk back to them. If that makes sense.
Now,
Actually, that makes Beleth a very apt comparison.
Yeah. Now I wonder why they ditched Melodus for book 2, but because he's gone.
And yeah, Melodus is just gone in both book 2 and in 12.
But does anybody miss Melodus? No.
I liked him. I liked him in Shadow Dragon. I mean, he wasn't the greatest character, but I liked him. So if he's an exposition character, why did they ditch Melodus? Because Melodus fulfilled his role pretty well. And
because they didn't want to use Jagan in the main game, but they didn't want to get rid of Jagan because he's Jagan.
Maybe it's to show the progression of time or something.
Fun fact: Jagan is not the Jagan in the game that Jagan is in.
Well, yeah, okay. I was gonna make a spoilery quip, but no, I won't.
But will he be Jagan much longer?
No, yeah,
because
Chris,
he's an old man.
Chris doesn't have a dedicated avatar class either, which is kind of a staple of avatars after this game.
Yeah. And as you said, Robin and Corin take up bigger places in story too. Especially in Fates. But yeah, story for another time, I guess.
Yeah, and one good thing about Chris is they do have support lines with literally every playable character. So a lot of times this is the only way you're going to be getting real dialogue out of some of these characters. It's just bouncing off Chris.
Dolphin Marcellin, for example.
Yes.
Or Castor.
Otherwise, Chris doesn't really have that big of an impact on the main story. He does one thing in Katarina's storyline. The rest of Katarina's storyline revolves around other characters that are new to New Mystery, and he's kind of the central driving force of the new recruits in the prologue. And then after that point, he kind of just serves as basically Marth's muscle, and then that's it. He just basically fades into the background.
Yep.
The only thing after that point that Chris really does constantly is he kind of acts as the player vessel to get the storyline recaps every chapter, because Jagan will recount the story every chapter and tell you what you have to do, and he does this to Chris, and in order to kind of act as a player vessel for that.
Yeah, in general, Chris is just there to make the player soak in the world, kinda, and get more informed about it.
Yeah, Chris is there to take up all the lore dumps that Marth shouldn't be getting because he already
Yeah,
knows them.
but also the supports, right? That's so he
Yeah, and
can.
also the supports with
And
characters that don't really have supports with anyone else.
As I said, that's the big difference with like Robin or Corin, that they really exist more as central drivers of story, while Chris is just like a receptacle to put all the lore and story and characters in, basically, instead of being central to the plot.
Yeah, Chris is definitely closer to Mark in FE7 than he is to Robin or Corin.
Mm-hmm.
But is like Beleth.
Yeah, I don't
hate
know
Beleth.
a lot about Byleth, but
I really hate Beleth.
get rid of the avatar system. Whatever.
A lot of people would agree with you.
Yeah,
Except
but
yes.
yeah, my problem, honestly, my problem is more with avatars like Robin or Corin than like Chris or the FE7 tactician. Like,
You want to
You're
compare
gonna
him to
hate
like
Beleth.
the other? Do you want to compare him to the other avatars really quick, YM?
well, did already did that. So like, yeah, okay. So like, I think Fire Emblem works better without these these player insert characters central to the story. Like, yeah, I just find it annoying. And like in Three Houses, they apparently have this half-half system where Byleth is a silent protagonist, but also, and you can't customize them, but they're also really central to the plot. And like, it's kind of awkward because they don't talk.
Mm-hmm.
They don't even have a name, or yeah, they do have a name, but no one calls them by their
Yo,
name. So like,
teach.
yeah, okay, but I think, yeah, okay, if they had to retain the avatar system, I really like them to go back to like what they have in this game instead of like in Awakening and Fate and in Three Houses.
That would be
Personally.
fair, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just have-
Also, whenever you complete a paralog, you get to have a different accessory for Chris, which is kind of refined in Fates a little bit more into the accessory shop.
Yep. Rice offers to shave your head bald, and I appreciate that.
He
Little
still
head-
gives you like one of her hair bands, and then later you can get like I think bishop hat.
Wendell hat is best.
Yeah. And then
Just-
you get like a eye patch from someone. Like
I think the eye
Malice,
patch is
maybe?
as a starting
And you
option.
Oh, is it?
You get like a skull for your head from Ymir, I think.
Mm-hmm.
That sounds right.
That's weird. But yeah.
Customization is fun.
Yeah, Chris is.
I think is this the
honestly-
point where I insert a picture of Bobo the Clown?
Sure.
Sure. Chris is actually kind of a footnote for FE12, surprisingly, because like we just did, you can talk for like, God, you can literally talk about this game in almost explicit detail, like never mention Chris.
Yeah,
Which we pretty much did.
honestly, like, I often forget Chris that new mystery even has an avatar, to be honest. Like,
It's not like Awakening where like the avatar in Awakening has to be the only one to kill the final boss, and like there's this very specific character in the Awakening's plot who turns out to be the avatar's father, and he's like really important to the main plot because the avatar's the reason all of this is happening, and it's not.
No,
like,
Chris is just there.
yeah.
it's
Chris
not
is
like
about
in
the importance
Fate.
of Luke.
It's not like in Fates where he's secretly the heir to like this whole other kingdom, and it's like his choice, the Avatar's choice that decides
Oh
the fate
no,
of
the
everything.
choice.
It's the Avatar's choice that decides the
No.
fate of all the kingdoms, or like, and it's
Marth
not.
is still the main character. There is no question.
Yeah, and like Byleth is like literally God, essentially.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like Byleth's choice of their class will have a ripple effect that will affect the fate of the entire world. It's like, no, Chris is just Marth's muscle. Martha's the main
Yeah,
driving
Chris's
force of the plot.
decisions are what kind of hat will I wear today?
Yeah. So like
Chris, like the most essential role that Chris has is being Marth's essentially retainer / bodyguard, and like that's the
Yeah.
most essential he gets to the plot, which is not very essential at all because of the entire army.
Yeah, if it had to be compared to Fates, he is like what those retainers, Inigo or
Azama.
As no, Deku, no.
He's like Laszlo or
Yeah,
Odin,
Laszlo, Odin,
Niles.
Niles, that kind of stuff. Honestly, that's kind of what I'm thinking of him of. Also, for the record, Azama, worst guy ever.
So,
Okay, I guess let's rate it then.
yeah, I guess so.
All right. What do you guys? Jacob, we'll start with you.
I would probably give this either an A plus or an S because this honestly is a really well written game. It doesn't have a lot of glaring flaws with the gameplay. I don't even think it has any really glaring flaws with the gameplay. Just some things I wish were done a tiny bit better, but not to the degree of something like Thracia, where there's an entire canon that's just undermined by some oversight. It's basically Shadow Dragon, but with substance to it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that's about my review of it. Is I did like Shadow Dragon, but it was just missing a lot of stuff that I wanted, and pretty much all of my issues with Shadow Dragon were solved with New Mystery. So I think I gave Shadow Dragon a B, which means that New Mystery is an A.
All right, and I think I'll give in the end I'll give New Mystery a B or a B minus because I really do like this game, and like as you said, it really expands a bit on Shadow Dragon and stuff. But I also think that other games in the series have executed some of the concepts it has better. Like yeah, but those are a bit spoilery, and I think the mid game can get a bit tedious gameplay wise.
Honestly, to add on to my little summation, I would probably favorably compare this to Echoes in terms of what it did for our.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah.
So, I think
And
everything.
in closing, I think the only thing that's left to say.
There's one last thing I want to kind of edit onto that. This
All right, go ahead, then.
game kind of, because of what it did for the BSX, historically you may know that the BSX, this is Teleview, kind of is neglecting my Nintendo and kind of swept under the rug. This game basically kept the BSFE cast from being banished into oblivion, and this kind of gave them a major role in a main story and also remade their one game. So New Mystery deserves credit for that, in my opinion.
Yeah, definitely. Because like other series also had games on the BSFX Teleview thing, and those really didn't end up well. Like you had what BS Ancient Stone Tablets for Zelda, and like a sequel to Mario Bros. 2 / Mario USA, and then just vanished into the ether.
Mm-hmm.
Gone.
Yeah, and this gave us Malice and fleshed out Malice. So
Yeah.
it's actually really good because she's actually a very enjoyable character in my opinion. Would have been a shame to have her just fade into the ether.
Yep.
Sorry for making you have to edit that around, Deku.
Yeah, it's fine. And now, in closing, there's just one more thing I want to say, and that's put Arlen in Heroes. Do it, IS. He deserves it. He's a good character. All right, goodbye.
All right. Goodbye.